Scott Carney with me today. Hi, Scott. So
Hey, man.
today, I will start by telling my audience who you are. So you are the investigative journalist, and also you are the author of best-selling books. And I would like to mention one book, and it is What Doesn't Kill Us, because today the topic of our conversation will be about it, and we will talk about Wim Hof method. I think you are one of the best person to talk about it because you are one of the first practitioner, right?
Yeah, I mean, I met Wim in Poland actually, in 2013, and I was one of the first people he trained ever, and yeah, it changed my life. And the reason we're talking now is because there are some issues with the Wim Hof method that we are going to get into.
Yeah, I'm excited. And it's funny that it changed your life and you started this practice to kind of, uh, I'm sorry, kind of show that it's wrong. You wanted to
Right.
show that
Yeah. So
it's wrong, right?
debunking is the word
Oh,
that
yeah,
we
yeah,
use.
yeah.
So yeah, I've written a bunch of books about sort of charlatan gurus and like false spirituality and fraud and things like that over the years. And when I met Wim, and this is one of the books, it's called The Enlightenment Trap. And when I met Wim, I was investigating a group where someone died meditating on a mountaintop in Arizona, and they died of dehydration. And I heard about Wim, and Wim is like this crazy health guru who says that he can survive the Polish winter in his underwear and change his body and make himself so much stronger than any human should be able to. And I thought that was probably a lie. And so I flew out. I had a commission from Playboy magazine, and my idea was that I was going to show the world that he was a fraud. The problem is I tried his method, and I ended up climbing up a mountain, a ski hill in Poland. I think you pronounce it Śnieżka, right?
Śnieżka, yeah.
I climbed up that mountain. It was very cold, and I was like warm, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing! It's life changing!" And I became Wim's like first real evangelist on the international stage, right? I was out there, I was promoting him. I wrote this book that was a New York Times bestseller. After my articles came out, the sort of the international community started to embrace him. He was on Joe Rogan, he was on Yes Theory, he was on all these like really big channels, and he got a lot of credibility because of that. And honestly, the method works. Like, it cured an autoimmune illness for me. I was able to climb up mountains. I climbed up Kilimanjaro with Wim, again in a bathing suit. Like it's been a really great ride, for sure.
Yeah, so you said earlier that it changed your life. How exactly?
Yeah. As I was saying, like I used to have like canker sores, which are big mouth ulcers that were like, like this big on the inside of my mouth, and it made it hard to talk, and it was just a miserable thing. I started doing the Wim Hof method, and I stopped getting them. I could, if I feel them starting, I just need to do like a couple of rounds of breathing every day, and they go away. I think in general, it's made me a healthier person. And it showed me that there are limits that I can push, and sort of embrace the environmental changes, and understand how the environment changes my body. And that whole process has been really, really beneficial. It has been awesome. And I stand by it. I stand by all of that stuff because the cool thing about the Wim Hof method is there's actually some pretty decent science behind it, that shows that it has benefits for anxiety, it has benefits for autoimmune illnesses, and benefits for various chronic illnesses. And so that's all true. I wouldn't necessarily say it's unique to the Wim Hof method. Like, you don't need to be Wim Hof to have those changes. You could probably find it in yoga and other things. But the cool thing about Wim Hof is that he's actually studied it in laboratory conditions.
Okay, so as I understand, you still use the method, right?
Yep, just about every day I do the breath work and jump into an ice bath.
Okay, great. And you were super fascinated about this old method, but something changed. What changed exactly?
Yeah, I think it's sort of like Wim got too famous in a way. Like, so Wim, and I was very clear about this in my articles and my books, that Wim might be the prophet who opens the door to these practices and can get people really excited about them. But he's also a madman who's like bananas crazy and uh and is not a responsible human being really at all. And people have been following him as if he's an infallible guru, as if he is always smarter than the science. And as I think Wim gets more and more popular, he becomes more and more certain of himself, and he's becoming more like the gurus that I was writing about when I was first debunking the Wim Hof method. When I was first debunking like cults around the world. And it's a strange position for me to be in, because as Wim has gotten more popular, I have been less and less impressed with his own message. And in addition, because he's sort of crazy, he never has understood the biology of what's going on with cold exposure and breath work. Like, he just talks sort of madness into the microphone, and it's always been our role as journalists to sort of correct him. But he's also teaching a dangerous combination of hyperventilation in water that is likely to make someone pass out. And he has tons of videos about that on his own channels, and on like when he goes on podcasts, and sort of all over the world. And for people who are only casually interested in the Wim Hof method, they see a video somewhere and like, hey, cool, I can also perform these great feats. And since the Wim Hof method is cold exposure and breath work, people naturally assume that you should combine those and do them at the same time. And when they do, people pass out in the water and they drown. And so when I was first writing What Doesn't Kill Us, we knew about 2 or 3 people who had died doing this. And there's sort of warnings in my book that, hey, this is bad. And I figured that Wim would stop teaching it that way. When after I talked to him, after he sort of like saw the legal threats that were coming, and I guess as just sort of an author, I just sort of stopped paying real close attention to Wim and exactly what he was teaching until I guess earlier this year, when I started looking into drownings. And I found that between 16 and 18 people have drowned doing the Wim Hof method in water, and Wim continues to teach these practices.
So when I have watched your video about Wim Hof, this Wim Hof gate, I was really shocked that he was saying something like that, because when I was learning this practice, this method, one of the first things that I'm not sure if I watched the Wim Hof video or was it just some instructor video, they specifically told to not do it under any circumstances different than laying down or sitting. So I was quite shocked. And yes, is Wim Hof still saying that?
Honestly, I don't know. He's been less on social media since my videos had started coming out. I will say that since I started banging on this drum, there's a lot more warnings on his website, and they're removing videos that show Wim Hof hyperventilating in water off of their official channels. But I don't think he's ever stopped, and I don't think he's ever going to change on this, because Wim is, he's crazy. He's a madman, and he just does his breathwork practice however he wants to do it. And no one can tell Wim don't do something. He just, repeatedly puts himself in danger and puts other people in danger as well. I mean, one classic example that I put in my video is the notorious enema incident, right? So just to illustrate how crazy Wim is, in 2008, after he hadn't seen his kids for 10 years because he abandoned them to shack up with another lady, he said he was going to meet one of his kids in a park in Amsterdam called Vondel Park, and he arrives there early, and his son is still not there. And so he swims out into the middle of the fountain and gives himself an enema. And an enema, for someone who's not fluent in English, is when you sit on you put a hose up your butt and you flood it with water. And so he sat on a fountain spigot with, and let the fountain shoot up his butt to, clean out, as he says, get the shit out. And he did this, and the water actually cut through all of his intestines. It basically killed him, and he swims to the side of the pond with blood and poop coming out of his butt. And then his son is there, and he said the first thing he says to his son in 10 years is, "Take me to the hospital, I'm dying." And the reason why this story, I mean, it's a crazy story. Like, it's not a normal thing to do, to go give yourself a fountain enema. But the reason why this story is as important is it shows you how careless Wim can be with his own life and his own social propriety and his own example. And to think that people would look at a social media post that he does, or an appearance on Goop Lab or in the BBC, where he's frequently portrayed, the fact that he would repeat these incidents over again, it's sort of insane that anyone would follow his example. But they do follow his example, because I think the media, and in a way I'm responsible for this because I helped launch him into fame. The media ignores the bad sides of Wim Hof. They ignore the crazy stuff, and they're just promoting the guru. They're just promoting this side of him, which is indestructible. And the message is, you can be indestructible too if you follow Wim's example.
Yeah, before I've heard this crazy story, I have heard Wim Hof on the Q&A when somebody asked him why he got this scar on his belly, and he told that it was his habit to go there and go to this fountain. It was pleasurable, but then they changed the power of it, and that's why it happened. Mm-hmm. So it's quite a different story. Like, it's just a mistake. It's not like he's crazy from this perspective.
Well, it's still crazy. The story that is that they changed the spigot, and it was a more powerful spigot, and he didn't know how dangerous it was, that this could happen. So that's part of the story. But he also says he's done it like 100 times. And who gives themselves an enema in a public fountain 100 times? First point. Even if you know it's safe, who does that 100 times? Because that's what his story is. The second part of this is the timing of the incident. Okay, so he had literally after his ex-wife died. So Olaya Hof commits suicide. She jumps out of a window, and then Wim Hof is tasked with taking care of his children. And then after 2 years of taking care of his children, he's like, I can't be a dad anymore. I'm so bad at it. And he abandons them in a squat house. A squat house is like an abandoned house with no heating, no supplies, no anything. And he just shacks up with another woman in another town. After 10 years, after that relationship is coming to an end, he says, I'm going to meet my son, who I haven't seen in 10 years. And that is the moment where he hurts himself, right? That's weird, right? That's not a coincidence. That sounds to me like it's somebody who is trying to show how sad they are, that they were so bad that they are now hurting themselves. That to me is my interpretation. And when I interviewed Wim about it, and I have a recording of this on my video, which is on my YouTube channel, you can actually hear him saying, yeah, maybe I thought I wanted to kill myself. So there is something more here than just, ha ha ha, I made a mistake and almost killed myself on a fountain spigot, which is also bananas.
Yeah, that's for sure. So you mentioned that media ignored bad stuff about Wim Hof just to make him some kind of a guru. But yeah. Haven't you done the same with your book at first?
Yeah, I would say that that's a major theme in What Doesn't Kill Us, is that, I mean, in my defense, I do mention his madness. I call him a prophet, a madman, and I show how he almost got me and other people killed on Kilimanjaro. So the message of his erraticness is in What Doesn't Kill Us, but it is not strong enough. Like, I took out the fountain story, I took out the abandoning the kids story, I minimized his drunkenness in the book at the advice of my editor. And incidentally, my editor is the person who wrote his autobiography, The Wim Hof Method. So his name is Mark Weinstein. Wim, of course, doesn't write because he's not a writer. But we thought at the time, look, we're trying to get the idea across that ice bathing and breath work is good for you. So if you present the leader as an insane guy who almost impales himself on a water spout, that is not going to engender good feelings from the reader. And so we took it out, and I objected to this. I said that I wanted to keep it in. My editor said, no, we should take it out. We had a conversation, and eventually I agreed, okay, we'll remove it. I think that was a bad call. You know, in retrospect now, the book's been out for, 6 years, I guess. There's so little media out there that even went as far as I did in my revised version of What Doesn't Kill Us. Like, everyone says Wim Hof is amazing. Everyone says, oh my God, he's crazy in such a good way. And you should be crazy, embrace a little crazy too. And that is the wrong message. I think there's a real place for truth, which is one reason why I'm being so public right now to the world, because as Wim gets more and more famous, as he gets his millions of followers and his platform, which is just enormous now, there is more and more risk of people getting the wrong message and following his example.
Have I heard correctly that you mentioned hiding his drinking problem?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you talk to anybody over at the Wim Hof Method and you talk about alcoholism in his past, which is pretty apparent that he was an alcoholic, they will tell you that he was never an alcoholic and you should never say that. And if you do say that, well, they will sue you. This is something that happens from Inner Fire, which is the organization now run by his children. And they are very protective over that idea because Wim is presented as a health and fitness hero, right? He's a smoker, right? He's a breath worker, and that seems wrong. And so these contradictions, they try to clean up his image repeatedly. And by doing that, you only present the good side. You only present this crafted image and not reality.
Yes, so that's quite a shock for me. And what else don't people know about the Wim Hof himself?
There are some things that I can't quite talk about because I have to verify them still. But I would say that people should look in a little closer to the story of Olaya Hof, his wife who committed suicide in 1995. The story that Wim Hof presents repeatedly is that when she died, he was in grief, and that he had to go to the ice water to manage his grief. And if he'd only taught her how to use ice water, she wouldn't have died. And this is like a foundational story of the Wim Hof method. I think that story is much more complex. Oh, my phone was ringing. I think that story is much more complex than it is. And although I have information that I'm not going to share here on this podcast, I will say there's a Daily Mail interview that Wim Hof did where he talks about Olaya almost slitting Einam's throat with a knife. Einam is his son, and and he alludes to a lot of abuse in that relationship. And I think there's a lot more to dig into in that vein, but I can't go into what I've found so far.
Okay, I understand. So the things that you've talked so far about, they are 100% verified.
the things that I have talked about right now are all very, as far as I know, they all happened, right? I mean, I wasn't present at the fountain incident. Like, I wasn't spying on him with binoculars. I didn't have a camera going on him. So, you know, it's a he said situation. So I'm interpreting the facts to the best of my ability. The deaths that I have looked at are all 16 deaths. Again, I wasn't present at those events. I'm taking people's statements and doing the best I have with the information. So I don't know if anything's going to hold up in court since there is a lawsuit that's going on. I don't know how the court's going to rule. I am presenting the information as best I know it.
Okay, I understand. So what many people love about the Wim Hof method is the fact that it's completely free. You can just go outside to the nature and do it. You can just find a cold water and do it. So is it a business or just a natural method?
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually love the fact that it's mostly free. Like, if you learn the method, and you can learn the breath work online very easily, you can learn the cold exposure, you can just jump into water. All of that's great, and all of that is free. There are also courses that you can buy on the website, and there's instructor trainings that you can get. And I don't think the prices are necessarily terrible. Like, there was a $99 course that had some questionable material, but $99 isn't so insane. There's also $400 and I think $500 courses as well. I think we're getting into like a little extra, but who am I to say that someone can't charge what they want for their stuff? I will say that the marketing is intense. It is deceptive in my mind, and I think that a common allegation is that it's all about the money. And the reason why that is a statement that I can make is because the way it's run, and it's run by Wim Hof, who is Wim Hof's son, they act very culty. They act in a way that is like minimizing the
responsibility.
Yeah, their responsibility. They're minimizing his negative aspects. They're not presenting a full picture, and I don't believe they really have a grasp on the physiology of the things that they talk about. It feels almost like I don't know, like an MLM, sort of like a Ponzi scheme in a way. I don't think it is a Ponzi scheme, but it's very like internet marketing forward. They have all these click funnels involved, and it's, on one hand, I don't really mind that he runs a business. Of course, you can make money doing the things that you do. On the other hand, there's a lot of command and control and a lot of group think in those organizations where they sort of perpetuate a lie, and I do not like that.
So they cooperate with some universities and they research this method. So why are you saying that they are not sure about the physiology of it?
Oh, I don't think the people inside the method, the people in the leadership, or even, and especially Wim himself, understand what those scientific papers say. I think that these scientists, and for instance, Otto Music, who's if you go onto Wim Hof's Instagram page right now, the pinned photo on the top is Otto Music putting Wim Hof in an MRI in Wayne State University. So, and he did a paper talking about how the Wim Hof method is very similar to the placebo effect, and maybe helps disclose some of the underlying mechanisms of the placebo effect. The paper is pretty good. I've read the paper. I know Otto Music. I've talked to him. And yet when you actually talk to Otto Music, he's like, yeah, they're completely misusing my work. It's not really about the Wim Hof method. It's about any mind-body method that you use. I happen to talk to Wim Hof, and I happen to do this. And Otto says to me repeatedly, and you have him on video, he's saying that he does not want to be involved with the Wim Hof method or that organization anymore because it's all about the money.
So they make it the benefits and everything bigger than it actually is right now proven.
Yeah, I would say in general. And my feeling on the scientific papers out there are that they're promising. Like, there is something to the Wim Hof method. I've experienced it, but there's also objective data to it. And when you look at that data, it's like anywhere from like a C+ science paper to like a B+ science paper. There's no A+ science paper. There's like pretty good. And pretty good is okay for me to try something, right? Like pretty good is okay, but it's not okay to be like, you're going to win the Nobel Prize, which is what Wim always wants to do. He always talks about how he's going to win the Nobel Prize and he's winning the award. And so he goes beyond the science pretty far in a way that, you know, when making promises to your audience that you can cure cancer or cure AIDS or something like that, and you can't actually do that, I think that's dangerous. And he doesn't say it all the time. That's the other funny thing. Sometimes he says it can cure AIDS and cancer, and sometimes he doesn't.
Oh yeah, that also shows his madness, right?
Yes. Yeah, and it's a hard position for me to be in because I actually really like Wim. Like as a person, I think he's great. I think he's done a lot for the world. I think many, many, many people have benefited from it. So like I'm not out here trying to cancel Wim. I'm not trying to be like, you're the worst person in the world. It's the thing is that it's sort of like with Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. And he has increasingly greater and greater power and is increasingly abdicating responsibility. And that's sort of that fundamental problem. And in addition, the people who follow him, they fall into two camps. People are just like, want to try some stuff, learn some science, and are pretty rational about what they're doing. And then there's another group of people who are like, Wim Hof can do no wrong. And I love Wim because he saved my life and he saved millions of other people's lives. And anyone who says anything wrong about him is Judas. That's cult thinking. That's like look at the comments on any of my YouTube videos these days, and you will see that there are a lot of people in the cult of Wim Hof. And anytime you give your own agency over to someone else, it's dangerous.
At the beginning, it's hard to distinguish between positive, energetic person and madness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and I also perceive Wim Hof as somebody positive, that's always positive, happy, always smile. But yeah, when I've heard your materials, your content, yeah, I've changed my mind.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist and I can't diagnose somebody. But I will say from my lay perspective, he is a little bit manic depressive, right? He has these highs and he has these lows. And when everyone loves manic people, if you see Robin Williams on a YouTube video, you're like, this guy's great. He's got so much energy and he's wacky and I love him. And then you miss the Robin Williams that eventually committed suicide because he was so depressed, right? We don't like the depressives. And what we present for Wim is all of the best side all of the time. It's like with anyone's Instagram, you don't show the bad side ever, right? Like I don't post, I'm so depressed today, my writing isn't going well. Like I don't do that. No one does that, right? Instead, you post the good stuff. And when Wim's good stuff, his goods are higher and his lows are lower than other people. I've seen him very, very angry in the past. I've seen him very, very depressed. And those are sides of his personality as well. And for him to say that his method cures depression and cures anxiety, well, it hasn't for him. So why would it cure it for everyone else? It's a tool that you might use that might help in some cases, but it's not a panacea.
That's a good point. So the idea came to my mind that maybe Wim Hof is being used by the whole organization. Have it flow through your mind?
Oh, of course. I mean, if you look at Wim Hof, who is the only owner of the Wim Hof method. So Wim, according to corporate records, has no ownership stake in the business of the Wim Hof method. The business has about $18 million in assets. That's about 17 million euro. He, according to all of the records that are filed, his son, Wim Hof, owns the trademark, owns the corporate assets, owns everything, and Wim owns nothing. That's very clear. Now, Wim will sometimes tell you, I have an agreement with Wim to share the assets. But as I understand the law in the Netherlands, you actually have to register that with the government, and it is not registered. So something is going on there. In addition, Wim Hof repeatedly says on podcasts and other places that he does not practice the method, and that he only got together with his father in 2008 after he saw that it could make a lot of money. So it's clear that there's a disconnect between the actual leadership and Wim Hof. On the other side, I don't think Wim Hof can run a business. Like, I don't think Wim has a business mind. So, he does need somebody in there managing his affairs. I just don't think the current leadership has proven that they have what it takes to do that in a responsible manner.
Can anybody see the conversation with this Adam?
Yeah, with Wim, Enaham. Yeah, it's linked to in my video. It was something. It was on the Yogi Show podcast that came out in 2000 and I want to say 2020. And it's like an hour-long conversation with Wim. There's another one that came out like only about 6 months ago, also with Wim, also very telling. And there's a link to it in my video.
Oh, because for me it's quite shocking to understand that somebody is publicly admitting that he got connected with his father for money. It's shocking.
Yeah, but if you think about it, Wim's mother committed suicide, and he blamed Wim for her death, and then Wim abandoned him for 10 years. I mean, that is a messed up family dynamic. Like, that is crazy. Wim is one of the worst fathers in the world. And then after 10 years, Wim comes back to him. He's like super in debt. He's got $30,000 of divorce debt. And he says, Wim, can you help me? And Wim, who is Wim has like a business sense to him, so he could form a business. He says, sure. But Wim's personality is also like, not many people like Wim. Like, if you go around to the world and you talk to people who've done business with Wim, most of them come back and say that he's quite mean, angry, and money grubbing. For instance, if you had known Wim for years, you were childhood friends with him, Wim, and you say, hey, Wim, can we hang out? Wim will probably write to you, intercept the emails, and then say, you can hang out with my dad for 1 hour for 1,500 euro. Like, that's the shit that he does. Like, if you should try this. You should write to Inner Fire, and you should say, hey, I'd like to interview Wim for my podcast. And then see if they come back and say, well, Wim's normal hourly rate is $50,000, because that's usually what they do. And they will, he intercedes and he kicks people out of Wim's life. He isolates Wim and then probably controls him in a number of ways. Not only owning his house, but also controlling any money that Wim makes.
That's absolutely crazy. And in Poland, there's no talk about any of that at all, because you act in English media. You publish your videos in English. And in Polish, there's zero information about it. So
you have to translate me into Polish. I know my book is in Polish. I it's quite popular in Poland. And I think I have. Wait, let me see. Is this Polish?
Yeah, exactly. That's Polish.
Great. Yeah, there we are. There's the Polish version right there. But I need to update it because I need to include more recent information about what's going on in the business. And I'll probably release an update in the next year in America.
Okay. Will the name remain the same?
I would assume so. I mean, it's the weird place that I'm in is that I still love the method. I'm still part of that icy breathy, miracle working stuff. I just think it has become a cult. I think it has become too much about Wim's personality and not enough about the actual practices. And I think that what we need to do is get rid of the idea of Wim Hof method, and we need to call it the huffing and puffing and icy method, like something else. Because I think by calling it the Wim Hof method, you sort of say that everything that Wim Hof does is the method, right? And then you've embraced his personality and his madness at the core of what it's about. So it's so intertwined that he has actually additional liability because of this. He has additional responsibility to actually stick to the tenets that he wrote or that he promotes. And when he goes off script, people are like, oh, well, the Wim Hof method is what Wim Hof does.
I was even wondering once if Wim Hof is his actual name, because it's so good for marketing, right? Mm-hmm. Wim Hof, it's good for international, etc. For example, my name, it wouldn't make sense to create my name method.
Yeah, your name is hard on the international scale.
Yeah. So the question is, Wim Hof is his original name?
Yeah, his name's Wim Hof.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Eric is his middle name. Wim Eric Hof.
Oh, okay. I would like to talk right now about the Śnieżka conspiracy, because it's connected with Poland, and I have seen your video about it. So can you tell what happened there?
So in, I think it was 2018. It was a little while ago that this happened, where they had 38 Wim Hof method instructors in training. So to become a Wim Hof method instructor, you pay a bunch of money, and then you do a little bit of breathing exercises. You learn a little bit of how to market, and then they do a big, event with you. And at that point, they were climbing up Śnieżka, which is what a lot of people have done doing the Wim Hof method, which is a ski slope, not incredibly dangerous, not very technical. It's a ski slope. But the weather report was pretty bad that day, and they went up the slope, and they didn't have all of the right equipment, and they got caught between like a house that's halfway up. It has like warmness, and then on the top, which has the observatory where there's other, an indoor space, and they got caught in an ice storm. And a lot of people, they're all shirtless, right? They're walking up this mountain, and all of a sudden the temperature drops to like nothing, and they're being hit with like icy sleet. It's a bad scene. And some people start getting hypothermic, so their body temperature drops really low. They managed to bring almost like everyone down the mountain to that sort of midway safe house. And 3 people have serious enough hypothermia that they need to be rescued by, the Polish search and rescue. And no one dies, which is great, right? Like, awesome. We had an issue and we sorted out, and there weren't any major consequences. People could have died, but they didn't. So good. So it was, but it still was sort of a flashy potential story. And Wim Hof told everybody who was on that thing never to talk to the media, and that if the media did get wind of it, that they should tell the press that it was a different group altogether. And so there's this other icy breathy guy, and I'm gonna totally butcher his name.
He's in Poland.
Yeah, he's Polish, right? Macieja Szyszkę, I think is
Macieja Szyszkę. I want to invite him to the podcast as well.
Yeah, nice guy, right? And he's also doing an icy breathy mountain thing, but his thing is going to happen in 3 days time from when this event happened. And then Wim tells all of the press, you should go talk to him, because he was the one who had that big disaster on the mountain. It wasn't us at all. So he's lying. He's straight up lying to the press. He's instructing people to lie. And then when I wrote to Wim and I was like, hey, did something happen on the mountain? He was like, no. It was this other dude all along. Never, ever blame the Wim Hof method for anything going wrong. And I have all these texts from Wim basically straight up lying. And I find that so disingenuous. I don't necessarily think the event was that bad. Like, I think the event was concerning, but everything worked out. And then you retool your safety protocols and you don't have it happen again. No problem. No one's going to be upset. The issue is when you lie, you are a liar and you realize that this person is lying about everything.
Yes, yes. And
oh, but you know what you should do? I never actually got the search and rescue report from Polish Search and Rescue. I emailed them. I put my email into Google Translate and I said, hey, can you tell me about this? And they never wrote back. You can, because you know Polish, and you should go and call them up and see if you can get the actual records. And I would love to see those.
yeah, that might be a good idea, yeah. And I would like to mention that all the proofs that you are talking about, they are in your materials, right? On your channel.
Yeah, on my channel, Scott Carney. I think it's SG Carney on YouTube. You just Google Scott Carney and it'll show right up. And yeah, and you can see all of my work. You know, it's all very well documented. It's all very fact checked. I had an independent fact checker look at it and check my work. I had lawyers look at it. Like, the information I present is fact, except where I'm making an opinion. If I'm making an opinion, it's an opinion. But all of the events are totally fact checked.
Yeah, I will leave a link down below, of course, to your channel. And that's crazy that media didn't even check that the adventure of our Polish guy Maciej Szyszka will be in 3 days, and they started spreading the message. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. And he was trying to raise money for a sick kid, right? It was a charity expedition with 300 people, like it's a whole different thing. And Einem has sent all these news cameras to his door, and it sort of hurt his reputation in Poland, because he's like, I don't even know what this is about. And it makes him look like he's a liar. And it was all inner fire all along.
Yeah, for sure. I would like to talk with him about it. So I will invite him. And right now I would like to also ask you about the lawsuit. What is it about exactly?
So, I was always worried that Wim would get sued or someone would die on an expedition. And I was sort of looking for that to actually occur, because Wim does dangerous things. It was funny. I was finished doing my video about the deaths that I'd found, that people have drowned doing the Wim Hof method. And I'd found at that point 13 or 12 or 13, I think, when I started doing that. And at the end of almost getting ready to publish the video, I was like, I wonder if anyone sued Wim. And I Googled Wim Hof lawsuit, something very simple, just to be sure that I was right, that no one had sued him. And there was this case in California, in Long Beach, California, where a girl named Madeline Rose Metzger, who was 17 years old, hung out with her dad in the morning, and then 8 hours later, her dad finds her face down in a pool, drowned. And which was, apparently she didn't normally use the pool, but she was a very good swimmer. They make a lot of, cases that she was a Wim Hof method practitioner and had been hyperventilating in the water and drowned. And I think the case is medium. I don't think it's great, because there's a lot of questions about what happened in that 8-hour period that caused her to drown. But the father thinks that she was doing the Wim Hof method in the water. And he has reason to believe that. And he's suing Wim Hof and Inner Fire for $67 million in this California court system, which is a lot of money, right? When I look at the case, I think it's not amazing. I don't think it's very well argued or articulated, but I do think that they are pointing at the right events, right? Because there's other people I've spoken to and other family members of people who've died who are a guy named Andrew Encinas, who was only about 10 miles away from where Madeline Rose Metzger died. He was like, hey guys, I'm going to go do Wim Hof method in the pool. And they were like, cool, see you later. And then 10 minutes later, he was dead. It's a much clearer connection between someone doing the Wim Hof method in water and death. And I know of probably 8 cases that are sort of very similar to that. The case that's going through California, I do not know how it's going to shake out. It could go a lot. I mean, he's a personal injury lawyer, which is, in America, personal injury lawyers are a little bit made fun of in the United States. But I do think they're pointing at a real issue with the Wim Hof method. And I will say that Wim Hof has responded in court. So the first thing you try to do in a lawsuit is you try to get out of the lawsuit before anything arguing happens, right? Because they're very expensive and you don't want to be involved. So Wim Hof submitted a response to the California court, which said, I have no relationship to anyone in California. Anyone called a Wim Hof method instructor, I do not know them. I have no relationship with them. I've never sold a product in California. All of those are lies. Like, they're just straight up lies. So what we have actually is a poorly argued legal case on the complaint, and we have a really bad defense from Wim Hof. So it's like a bad lawyer versus a bad lawyer, and I do not know how it's going to shake out.
Yes, but how many deaths are so far because of this problem of breathing in the swimming pool?
So according to I'm going to actually check my list because I keep on updating it. Right now we have 17 deaths that I have associated directly with the Wim Hof method. And the way I've collected this is very important to understand. It's from press reports that say Wim Hof method and drowning, like some reporter has gone in and checked this and said, okay, this is Wim Hof method and drowning. Or it's like a family member has contacted me and they've said, okay, this is exactly what's happening. So those are the two ways that you get your name on my list. And I will note that of these cases, of the 17 cases, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them are in the United States. This is what I can tell you by looking at my list of 17 dead people is that my sample is horribly skewed. There's no doubt in my mind that this is only a fraction of the actual number of deaths that are out there. Because what are the chances that Americans are uniquely misunderstanding Wim Hof, right? Wim Hof is popular everywhere. I mean, maybe Americans are particularly dumb. I don't think so. I think that what I'm actually looking at is just a very skewed sample of the total number of deaths, because it's very hard to end up on my list. In addition, I have another 11 incidents of people who are likely deaths with the Wim Hof method or almost died and were rescued. And those people all have the same statement. Hey, I was doing the Wim Hof method in water and I almost died. So we actually have them saying what they were doing.
From my perspective, 17 seems very little when you compare it to the scale that Wim Hof operates on, because people die even running. So it's normal that people will die with such a big audience, I guess.
Right, but that's sort of the crux here, isn't it? Is that if Wim Hof, none of these people had to die, right? It was a thing that they got their idea from watching Wim Hof to go do this, and it wasn't like a drug where a drug and honestly, if a drug goes out to 1 million people and 17 die, that's higher than the murder rate in America. So, and murder is bad. So the rates are how many people need to die before we think it's concerning? I would say 1 death is a concerning. 2 deaths is concerning. At what point do we ring the alarm bells that this is out there? And also realize that there could be 100 people dead, could be 200 people dead. I don't know what the actual number is, and that's sort of it's clearly something that Wim Hof needs to tamp down on. The second part of the response to that is, Wim Hof has like 6 million followers roughly in all social media, something about 6 million followers. And people say, look, but he's helped so many people. Well, I would love to know how many people he's helped. Like we assume it's millions, but is there any data? What is the denominator of this fraction? Actually, we don't know, because no one has quantified that. So you're basically making up a number, you're making up your denominator, but we know what the numerator is.
Oh yeah. So right now you spread this message, all the things that we've talked about, you spread them online. And what is your goal in doing that? Do you have some goal in it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel a responsibility. This is the biggest thing, is that I was very responsible in giving Wim Hof credibility in the world. And I feel like I put my reputation on the line for him. And now that it's clear that he's not abiding by the principles that made me embrace him in the first time, I have to correct the record. So that for me is the most important thing here. I don't want myself to be implicated in this, but I also don't want people to continue dying. Like I sort of don't want the emails from the mother whose son just died anymore. That would be great if that stopped. And the way you stop that is by stopping this sort of madness to be projected. Other goals that might come out of this, I don't know. I mean, it's about raising awareness. I mean, the thing I was supposed to be doing is I have a book on napping that I was writing, and I really wanted to finish my napping book. And I have spent 6 months writing about Wim Hof drowning. I'm a little fucking tired of talking about Wim Hof drowning, but every time I try to turn away from it, more information comes in, and I feel like I have to respond. At some point, I will be free of Wim Hof. I just don't know when that will be.
Okay. Some people accuse you of doing it for views. What would your response
money
be?
They also think I'm getting rich off of this. And for those people, I have to say, they might know something about social media that I don't know, because I spent $10,000 putting this video together, and my YouTube channel has made $300. No, I think am I $300? I think I've made $400 in total on this. So I am a terrible businessman if I'm doing this for the money. My video has like 37,000 views or something like that. Like, I've alienated like half of my audience. Like, half of my audience is like, I love Wim no matter what, and I'm burning your book. I get that message at least once a week now, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Like, no, this is the stupidest thing I could ever do if it was in it for the money.
So right now, imagine that inner fire wants to do good, and they listen to you, and they let you help them do some changes in their structure and their message. What would you like them to do exactly?
Yeah, that's a super good question, and it's so hard because the problem isn't just putting warnings on videos, because there are tons of warnings out there. Like, if you go onto the Wim Hof channels, there's warnings everywhere saying don't do this in water. So that's not the issue. The issue is, it actually has to do with branding. It's like how Wim Hof's message gets out there is he keeps on presenting this false image of hyperventilating in water is a good idea. Like, he's showing all these Guinness Book of World Records. If you go on to like Yes Theory and these other videos, they show that he's like has the world record for swimming underwater with his breathing method. Like, all of that needs to change at the root. And I think they need to acknowledge that Wim Hof is crazy. Like, they need to stop presenting him as an infallible guru and say, no, he's a madman and a prophet. And maybe there's a way that you can take the inspiration from Wim, but not follow his example. And I think it's actually going to be very hard to do that, because they need to find in themselves that they need to be honest. Like, they need to be honest about who they are that they're representing. And, I don't think the current leadership is open to that. I think that they want to protect his image. I think they want to make him breathwork Jesus. I don't think they want to make him just another, inspiring person on the internet. They want more out of that. And I don't think that's the way. I think that's dishonest to Wim. I think it makes him, it puts too much pressure on Wim. It makes him, if someone was always telling you you're a superhero, but you can't actually perform miracles, that's going to be a problem. And I think that we need to like fundamentally reconsider who Wim Hof is. I also think that Wim Hof is not a good CEO. I think you need a different CEO. I don't know who, but someone good, find someone good. Do not go for me, because I don't want to be CEO of Interfire. Find someone who can do this. I'm sure there's an instructor who's really good, who you can elevate. And you also need to stop attacking people who are telling the truth, which they do to me and to other people continually. They try to threaten and bully people away from the truth. And that is just a really bad tactic.
Okay, so if somebody right now sees some thumbnail that there might be something wrong with the Wim Hof method, and he's concerned, so I would like to ask you: is doing breath work, sitting on or laying down on the floor, is safe?
Usually, yeah. I think that in general, Wim Hof method is safe. But again, this is also goes where the messaging is so important. It is also bad for some people. Like some people have more panic attacks. It can trigger tinnitus, which is the ringing in your ears. It can trigger anything where your sympathetic nervous system is overhyped. It can make anxiety worse. It can make depression worse. So I think they need to, instead of presenting it as like a panacea, something that works for everything, they need to say, this method might be good for you. And here are some potential problems. And if you have that problem, try a different method. And I think that's an important message. I would say in general, though, the incidence of people having heart attacks or strokes from the Wim Hof method are quite low. There are cases of heart attacks and strokes from the Wim Hof method, but it's not a regular occurrence. It's certainly within the realm of millions of people are trying it, and it's sort of okay.
Okay, and you also are interested in other breathworks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So would you recommend any other breathwork?
Yeah, I would look at Buteyko, which is another method, which is sort of the opposite of Wim Hof method. Wim Hof method is hyperventilation. Buteyko is more like nasal breathing and slow. If Wim Hof method doesn't work for you, try Buteyko. Try lots of different things. Like, don't look at like one method as the answer, because I don't think Buteyko is the answer either. I think it's a conversation with your nervous system and the practices that are out there. You realize that these are tools in a very large toolbox.
Great. So we are running out of time. I wrote to you that in the end there is the part of the podcast when I ask the question that is always the same. Have you read this part, and are you ready for this?
No, I totally forgot what you were talking about. So shoot.
Okay, so the name of this segment is Every Failure is a Lesson, and it's about promoting failures as something good, something that makes you grow. So I would like to ask you, what was your biggest failure of the last year, and what have you learned because of it?
I mean, my biggest failure was taking on this particular thing, right? And like alienating my whole audience. Like that was my biggest failure. It was also my biggest success. I really like that question because I learn a lot from failure. I feel like being an investigative journalist is mostly about failure because you check out leads that don't pan out all the time. And the truth is that you just have to keep on failing and experimenting and reiterating and changing if you want to get better. So, I mean, my biggest failure in a way is also my biggest success. Is that my biggest failure is like, oh my God, I endorsed Wim Hof, and maybe there were problems with that, and that failure is also the success of notifying people that there are ways to correct this.
Yeah, because have you got famous because of this book? Or have you been famous before that?
Well, I mean, no, the book was huge. The book was a New York Times bestseller. So it was a very big book for me. I've written 5 books. I've read
Threat Market.
Oh, good. Yeah. So book was like 8 years before this book. And I have a totally fine career outside of Wim Hof. In fact, if I never had to do another video on Wim Hof, I would be excited. It would be brilliant for me. I would love that. The thing is, though, because that book was so popular, everyone comes to me for Wim Hof. So I feel like I'm an actor who's been typecast for a role. Like Scott's the ice bath guy. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm like the cult guy and the climate change guy. Like I do tons of I'm a world expert on organ trafficking. Like my career is fine. It's just that most people know me because of this book. So, in some ways, success is also a failure. Is that once you get known for something, people just want more of that. They want me to write more. They want me to write the sauna book like next. That sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I'm waiting for the book about napping, And in the end, I would like to ask you about where people can find you online if they want to learn something more about the topics we discussed today.
Yeah, so I have a podcast that's called Scott Carney Investigates. It's on Spotify, Apple, all the places. Also, my YouTube channel, Scott SG Carney. It's just Scott Carney something, or I forget what I call it. I keep on changing its name. Check out both those. I also have a website for all of my books, all of the other information about me, scottcarney.com. And just about all of the social media sites, I somehow managed to grab the handle SG Carney on all of the places.
Yeah, I will find those and I will leave them down below for sure. Thank you very much for attending this podcast. It was my first interview in English, so I'm glad we could.
You did great. You did great.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, and hopefully see you some days in the future.
Sounds good, man.
Jeżeli dotarłeś do końca, to zostaw w komentarzu taką oto emotkę serca, a na pewno przypnę Ci serduszko. Cieszę się, że rozmowa okazała się dla Ciebie wartościowa. Nie zapomnij jeszcze o łapce w górę oraz o subskrypcji, ponieważ rozmów takich jak ta będzie więcej. A teraz czas na autopromocję. Część z Was może nie wiedzieć, ale napisałem własną książkę. Jeżeli interesujesz się rozwojem osobistym lub jesteś na początku swojej drogi w tym temacie, to ta pozycja jest dla Ciebie. Z pomocą Progressus Dux skrócisz sobie drogę o 100-kroć. Streściłem w niej kilka lat swojego rozwoju w 85 praktycznych rozdziałów wypełnionych konkretami. Darmowe fragmenty już dostępne na stronie internetowej przemekwojcicki.pl